On this edition of Sightings, her name was Cathy, and her brutal murder nearly destroyed her family.
We were sentenced to living our lives without ever seeing her again.
Psychic Kathleen Ray retraces Cathy's last steps in search of a killer.
I feel like this is the end of the trail for him.
Everybody in this town has seen UFOs.
Then Sightings investigates America's most active paranormal hotspot, the mysterious Valley of Colorado.
We saw lights come off from this side of the mountain over here, come clear across and go over the top of these mountains on this side.
His eyes, right straight ahead, right there.
Later, holidays at Arizona's Gadsden Hotel with the ghosts of Christmas past.
I'm getting scared just talking about it, just thinking about it.
Healing defies the laws of science.
And a miraculous story about a master healer from Iran.
Welcome to Sightings. I'm Tim White. Cathy Torres was a great kid. She worked, went to college, was active in community service, and tutored high school students in English and Spanish. But when Cathy finally made the headlines, it wasn't for her promise or her talent. It was because she'd been murdered. 2 years after her death, her killer is still at large, and traditional police investigations just haven't worked. Can a psychic solve the case? He stabbed Cathy to death. He robbed a town and a family of their precious future, and he got away with it.
We're completely in the dark. We really have no suspect in this case.
But no one in Placentia, California is giving up. No one will let a monster go free without a fight.
The hardest thing is wondering who could have done this to her and whether this person will ever be prosecuted. Cathy was active, very bubbly, always smiling. She was just a happy-go-lucky kid.
She was a straight-A student and a role model for her younger sister, Debbie.
She was like real popular in school, and you know, she was real pretty, and I wanted just to be exactly like her, you know. I was like, yeah, you know, that's my sister.
At age 20, she was putting herself through college with a part-time job at the local drugstore. On Saturday, February 5th, 1994, she worked a busy pre-Valentine's Day shift. Just after 8 p.m., she called her mother to say she was on her way home. But by 9, she hadn't arrived. Then it was 10, 11, 12, and no sign of Cathy.
Debbie and I went looking for her, and to places we thought maybe she might have stayed, which didn't seem right, but we went to check and didn't find her car anywhere.
The next day, Cathy didn't show up for work. On Monday, she missed school. Mary feared the worst.
I just had a feeling that she wasn't coming back.
As hours turned into days, the entire town was mobilized. But no one found any sign of Cathy or her car. Then it started to rain, and Mary had a disturbing vision.
Tuesday evening, I finally managed to talk about it. And I believe I told my husband that I knew that Cathy was in her car.
On February 12th, exactly 1 week after Cathy's disappearance, her mother's vision became a reality. Cathy's car was found, and Cathy was in it, in the trunk, stabbed to death.
The day Cathy was found, we were sentenced to living our lives without ever seeing her again.
Police scoured the car for clues, but the rain had washed away any potential evidence. A large reward was offered, but no one came forward with the break investigators were desperately searching for.
You hit the wall, and until something else happens, where there's a break in one of those areas, the case remains unsolved.
People ask me why I do this type of work. It's to give closure to those who are left behind that are suffering.
Kathleen Ray is a psychic detective with a proven track record. Her successful work on a similar case in Fresno was encouraging to the Placentia Police Department, and investigator Loomis agreed to meet with Ray and record her psychic impressions.
I would say this man's at least in his middle 40s. This is a man that's seen her several times, but I don't feel like he was lying in wait for her. I feel that he's very friendly around children. I'd almost think of a custodian of a school or something, or a janitor of a school. And I feel that there's a dip in the road, and there's a green small building over here. I hear some type of motor. I feel like he turns off on a street that has an H in it, or a road that has an H in it.
Then, investigator Loomis accompanied Kathleen Ray as she attempted to reconstruct Cathy's last hours. She was trying to create a timeline and to find the actual site of the killing.
I feel that she feels fine about going to her car. And after she gets in the car and leaves, I feel she suddenly says, there's something I want to do. Because she stopped somewhere just to run in and do something. And if there's a video store, perhaps she stopped to get one but didn't get to the store.
That's a place that I know that she did stop. So I was surprised when Kathleen mentioned that.
At 8:30, I feel like it's the beginning of problems with this man.
According to Ray's psychic impression, it was here, at this strip mall, that Cathy Torres first encountered her killer.
She gets out of her car for some reason. I feel that he then comes up behind her, and he has a knife here. And he says, get back in and slide across. And I feel like he went out into an area where there's a dip in the road, and over here is a small, dark green building that, if I listen, I can hear a generator type of sound in it.
Ray looked for those telltale landmarks and the letters C and H as clues to the crime scene. She guided investigator Loomis past Central Street. She had found her C. Just moments later, they rolled over a large dip in the road.
A green box.
Here's the green box, and now there's the hum. You can hear the hum of that electricity there.
The large utility box was just as Ray had envisioned. It was a generator, providing power to some of Placentia's many oil wells. Sensing that the murder scene was very near, Ray was drawn to one particular rig. According to Kathleen Ray, it was here, in this oil field, that Cathy was murdered. Ray did not know that police already had evidence indicating she was right.
We do have a shoe that was analyzed by chemists at Unical. They determined that there was unknown pollen substance and also some sort of a petroleum-based oil in the dirt that was on the shoe.
Just beyond the oil field, Ray found her H. It led to a hospital, the same hospital where Cathy's body was discovered.
I feel like this is where the trauma came to an end. I feel like he's driving along after he has put her in the trunk of the car, parks the car, gets out, and takes off. And I feel that, that this is the end of the trail for him.
Her psychic vision of Cathy's fatal route was uncanny. The landmarks were exactly as she had foreseen, the letters as she expected. Kathleen Ray asked for a police sketch artist to help her create a portrait of Cathy's killer. The idea that he was an older man, perhaps a local janitor, were clues that the police had not yet considered, and ones they will now look into.
We hope that this photo and this story will give us a new jump start on this investigation.
As long as I'm alive and this is not solved, I will look here and there to try to find who murdered my daughter. I will never stop.
The city of Placentia has raised $36,000 in reward money for information leading to the arrest and conviction of Cathy Torres' killer. If you have information important to this case, please call the Placentia, California Police Department.
Next, the San Luis Valley has been experiencing UFOs, cattle mutilations, and mysterious fireballs.
There's an awful lot of strange things in the mysterious valley of Colorado.
The top-secret military testing facility known as Area 51 isn't quite as top secret as the government would like. Worldwide press attention has focused the eyes of the world on the skies above Nevada. But while amateur ufologists clamor for a glimpse of Area 51, the real action, the experts claim, has moved eastward to the government's new Black Project playground. The beautiful San Luis Valley in south-central Colorado is no stranger to paranormal activity, both in the air and on the ground.
Everybody in this town has seen UFOs.
We saw lights come off of this side of the mountain over here, come clear across and go over the top of these mountains on this side.
This area is like the center of mutilation phenomenon.
There's an awful lot of strange things that occur in the mysterious Valley of Colorado.
It's developed into a pattern of activity people here have learned to live with. But lately, the skies above this high-altitude alpine valley have started getting crowded, leading many longtime residents to speculate that the military has moved in without notice.
I'm a supporter of the military, but I don't believe in doing things that we don't need to do.
It really makes me furious that they continue to fly over these children.
Patricia Richmond has been a school teacher in the valley for more than 25 years. She worries about an accident.
First time I had an encounter with them were two jets flying just almost about ground level. That person endangered not only his life, but the life of every child and every employee in that building.
While most residents appreciate the need for national security, they believe the secrecy surrounding testing here only protects the military, not them.
When it does happen, there should be accountability from the commanders, but apparently the commanders here don't feel that they should feel that they want to do anything.
Lieutenant Colonel Buck Buckingham is airspace manager of the Colorado Air National Guard. He says the accusations about unsafe flyovers are simply untrue.
The Air National Guard policy is we fly no lower than 500 feet, which is what we do. We did have calls about the schools in Moffett. We did have calls about people in a vehicle getting attacked. They really weren't getting attacked. They weren't being used as targets. They perceived it that way because of how low we were.
We do have a lot of people living here, and I suspect there are desert areas that they could fly and do their drills, which doesn't have any population in it. So why they need to fly over this area is not particularly clear, unless there's some hidden agenda.
Because the military isn't talking, speculation about that hidden agenda has led many in this close-knit community to fear the worst. Some people believe that their livestock and they themselves are part of a Black Project experiment involving extraterrestrial technology. Ray Cook, a third-generation Valleyite and former NASA engineer, believes the Pentagon has a more sinister purpose.
What's occurring in many cases is you have a training activity which might be conducted by a guard unit, for example, that could be used to cloak the introduction of a super-secret aircraft.
And what they may be cloaking, he says, is the go-ahead to build the Western Range Complex, known as the WRC. According to military officials, the WRC is still in the proposal stage, but area realtor Bob Senderoff fears this new military test center is much further along.
If they really need this airspace, maybe there's something they're not telling us. And if there's something that they're not telling us, then I think we have every right in the world to be concerned.
I think if those people down there, I don't know what their agenda is. I don't know if it's a personal agenda, a personal attack on the military.
Sometimes you see some things in the military that make you very upset. And sometimes I think to get to the root of the problem is I think the military's been a bureaucracy in our country for 200 years, and they've forgotten who they're accountable to sometimes and who they really work for.
According to documents obtained by Sightings, the Western Range Complex flight corridor may extend south into New Mexico, rivaling the airspace now reserved for Area 51.
Some 70% of the increase that they proposed here is going to be flown by aircraft other than the local Air National Guard. And that big category of other, and of course other gives you the opportunity of mixing in flights by black programs on testing weaponry that they otherwise would not want to test out in the open.
We have no black projects. We have no laser capability. So whatever is going on down there that they think is, this gentleman, this unit, the Colorado Guard, knows nothing about it.
if you were going to run all your black projects, experimental craft, and you could throw in a few UFO type things to throw people off the track just enough to get them talking about aliens and UFOs, that it would be a great smokescreen and cover for any kind of operation you wanted to run.
I am suggesting we call the military to Window Rock and have them give us a report as to what they're doing.
I would say, quit lying. Tell us the truth.
Frustration is mounting as more and more people on the ground come to believe that their skies are being turned into the 21st century replacement for Area 51. Recent revelations about secret radiation testing nearby in the 1950s only confirm the fear that residents might be sitting ducks.
There has to be an integrated plan. And that integrated plan is something that they should lay on the table. And give people an opportunity to evaluate it, to determine if that's something we really want to support, instead of trying to do it on a clandestine basis.
The eyewitnesses that Sightings spoke with, particularly members of the Navajo Nation, are more than just angry. They're disappointed in a government they have supported and in a military they've served. And they wonder, if we can't be trusted, then who can?
Next, did aliens create our universe? The unbelievable science at work to free willing. And feng shui helps Hong Kong's futures exchange to new highs.
Here are some of the stories Sightings is following in the news. A recent headline in the Times of London is causing vigorous debate among scientists and religious leaders. It reads, aliens may have created universe, a claim based on the findings of not an overzealous ufologist, but a distinguished professor of astronomy. At the University of Massachusetts in Amherst, an astronomy professor is shaking up the world of cosmology with a startling theory about the origin of our galaxy. Professor Edward Harrison proposes that our world is the work of a superintelligence from another world.
One usually says God did it or designed it, and that's the end of it. But now we're beginning to see how, in fact, intelligent life can actually create a universe.
Citing Einstein's cosmic theories, Harrison believes that advanced beings from another universe would have had the tools necessary to forge a new universe inside the crucible of a black hole.
It goes into inflation like a bubble that bursts out of the side of this universe. It inflates and separates. Then begins the Big Bang, and then it becomes a universe eventually.
And Harrison speculates that one reason such superintelligence might have created our universe was simply as a kind of alien science project.
Our universe may not be the fittest. One might well see ways of creating fitter universes. Having created a universe, you can transfer into it, occupy it, and explore it.
And he does not rule out the possibility that there may be some among us who are the direct descendants of those extraterrestrial explorers. In San Francisco, California, David Phillips of the Earth Island Institute is supervising an ambitious project to bring about a family reunion for Keiko, the orca whale made famous by the movie Free Willy.
Keiko was donated from Mexico to us with the goal of hopefully one day being able to be reunited with his family. Probably the most ambitious plan ever launched for a marine mammal.
Prior to captivity, Keiko lived for at least 2 years in Icelandic waters with his orca family, called a pod. And because each pod has its own distinctive language, the project is endeavoring to learn Keiko's language and then search for a matching pod.
The experts feel that he was in the wild with that pod long enough in those 2 years to be able to have learned and be able to recognize the sounds of that pod.
Even though Keiko has been in captivity for nearly 16 years, scientists are hopeful that with an array of experimental techniques, they will be able to return Keiko to his family.
We're probably going to be doing satellite link-ups of acoustic hydrophones in Iceland to his tank in Newport, Oregon, so that we can try to actually have him be able to listen to the sounds of the whales in the wild.
If Keiko recognizes the songs of his pod, marine biologists will then conduct DNA testing to definitively link Keiko to his lost family.
we've taken DNA samples of Keiko, certainly through his blood, we can get a very clear genetic picture of Keiko. We're using the best and the most advanced technology to try to answer some simple questions of how can Keiko find his family in the wild.
In Hong Kong, preparations are underway for this British colony's return to China in 1999. But while the real estate may be returning to its roots, the culture remains decidedly Western, forfeiting many ancient spiritual beliefs, like the belief in feng shui.
I would believe that this is more or less a psychological effect.
Dr. Wong Wai-shou, a professor at the Chinese University of Hong Kong, believes feng shui is nothing more than an ancient superstition.
Like in the Western culture, you have Friday the 13th, right?
But don't tell that to these men on the floor of the Hong Kong Futures Exchange. Because of feng shui, the belief that spiritual energy can be manipulated for happiness and profit, things are looking up. After a terrible first quarter in 1995, the billion-dollar exchange was searching for a change.
And so we called the feng shui man out. He had said, you have a small slope going directly into the elevator bank. There is a very good chance that the wealth that is in this room will start flowing down, and then it'll be where the elevators can open up, and when you go down the elevators, the wealth could flow out of the building.
Riley followed the feng shui master's advice. 2 large aquariums were installed in a strategic location between the trading floor and the elevators.
And sure enough, next morning after the fish tanks, our volume goes up to double its normal average and set a brand new record.
For the balance of 1995, and so far 1996, the Hong Kong Futures Exchange has continued its strong performance that began when they deferred to the ancient wisdom of feng shui. We'll have more stories from the news next time. Now, here's what's coming up on Sightings.
For the people who work there, the Gadsden Hotel's past is a bit too real.
I saw a man shape moving down the hallway. I was petrified.
Later, a miraculous healing in the making.
At the turn of the century, Douglas, Arizona was the town that put the wild in Wild West. And at its center was the Gadsden Hotel, a posh playground for cattle barons, prospectors, and adventurers. The Gadsden is still the centerpiece of Douglas. It's still a hotel, and between Christmas and Easter, it still attracts a wild clientele, most of whom are dead. They say there's gold buried underneath the Gadsden, left by a prospector who took the secret of its location to his grave. Every year since then, starting around holiday time, the hotel has been haunted by the ghosts of Christmas past.
I don't know if ghosts have shadows or what, but I've seen it on my wall in my bedroom.
I don't know who it is, but it doesn't have a head.
I always get chills right there, right at that spot, right at the corner where I saw the ghost. It's a creepy feeling. Most people associate weird goings-ons with Halloween, but at the Gadsden, it seems like Christmas and Easter, but especially Christmas.
We planned a sightings investigation to coincide with the annual Yuletide haunting.
When we start putting up Christmas decorations around here, we all kind of get this feeling like, what's going to happen this year? This year, my mother-in-law and I putting up the decorations, and I was on a big ladder in the lobby next to the tree, and she saw somebody leaning on the mezzanine, the railing, watching us putting up the decorations. She figured it might be the elevator operator standing there leaning against the thing, and she started walking towards it, and it just disappeared. And she looked, the elevator wasn't there, and there was nobody around, and whatever was leaning on that railing watching us put up Christmas decorations was immediately gone. And we're wondering, you know, who's going to have the next experience? What's going to happen?
Was he the prospector or another notorious character from the Gadsden's past? Sightings first contacted local historian Lee Johnson.
The area in the early days was a very hostile environment.
By 1903, we had at least 50 saloons, and a year later, about 75. And it was very unruly.
The Gadsden was built during these turbulent times. Completed in 1907, it was the only luxury hotel for hundreds of miles, attracting an elite clientele. Then in 1927, the Gadsden burned and was rebuilt by bootleggers. A new kind of patron took over. In the lobby where guests play rummy today, gunfights raged, and many gamblers and rum runners were killed.
If you want to find ghosts, you should go where the most people congregated. In my opinion, that would be the Gadsden. The structure, the violence that has taken place, along with the fire, lends all the aspects to the atmosphere that you would expect to find a ghost in.
Many ghost investigators believe that untimely violent death is the stuff that ghosts are made upon. So it is not surprising that this place has become a treasure house of paranormal activity, and may be the reason why housekeeper Maria Castillo never really feels alone when she makes her rounds.
Presencia de alguien. I always feel the presence of someone.
Maria described numerous incidents in the Gadsden's hallways when ghosts started playing games with her. And some of those ghosts liked to play rough. In one bizarre incident, several co-workers saw Maria slapped by an unseen hand. They say welts raised on her skin, offering compelling physical evidence to her paranormal encounter. Other female employees described a presence that climbs into bed with them at night and paralyzes them with supernatural energy. Brenda Nally had one such encounter.
It was 10 o'clock. I turned the TV off, and I turned the light off. I opened my eyes, and I seen the shadow on the wall of this body floating about 3 or 4 inches over top of me, and I couldn't move. It just felt like something was trying to get inside of me from head to toe. I don't know. I'm getting scared just talking about it, just thinking about it.
Gadsden Hotel manager Robin Breckus had a frightening encounter with this supernatural energy during a power failure.
It was 4:10 in the afternoon, and the clocks all stopped, and nothing electrical worked.
Her guests needed candles, and so Robin went down to a storage area in the oldest and many say the most haunted part of the hotel.
I wasn't thinking about anything. I just ran down the hall and reached for the doorknob, and I thought somebody was watching me. So I turned the way that they would have had to come, and there was nobody there. So I reached through to open the doorknob, and I felt it again. So I looked the other direction, and I shined my flashlight, and I saw a man shape moving down the hallway. I was petrified. And so I grabbed my box that was right there, and I turned around and I ran. I've never seen the ghost again, but I've had a lot of weird things happen to me.
Because there have been multiple haunting encounters experienced by credible eyewitnesses, Sightings brought in psychic Peter James to assist in several experiments. Because Peter seems to be sensitive to haunting energy, we asked him to record his psychic impressions inside the Gadsden. Robin led Peter to the basement, where the rest of our team was waiting.
Hi.
Oh, this is the basement. Hi there. Hi.
The team was using thermovision, which records temperature fluctuations, and another camera was rigged with starlight infrared lenses. This camera operates in near darkness and also sees light bands invisible to the naked eye.
Peter, this is where I was when I had my experience with whatever's down here. I was standing here, but I didn't see anything right here. I saw something right over there in that doorway. And I'm feeling
Well, I'm feeling it as we speak right now, right behind me, right in this area. And I'd like to go up there and investigate, if you don't mind.
Okay.
This is where they enter from, and come up this way, and wherever they go within the hotel, this is the vortex.
Walk around it, Peter. Just walk around the circumference.
I'm going to walk around the circumference right here.
Remarkably, the perimeter of the energy vortex that Peter was tracing coincided with an area visible to the team only through the thermocam. The difference in color indicates a 2-degree warmer zone. Down the hallway, Peter felt the presence of another anomaly.
I'm in a circle of cool air right now. It's cold. He's right here, and I think this man was a bartender or he was a man in service. He doesn't give me a name, but he's showing me where he was stabbed and where he bled to death.
Moments later, a startling image appeared to the thermocam operator. It was a face.
Oh, wow. What? Okay. Can we get the monitor on this?
I'm trying to. You getting more?
I'm trying to get the monitor. Go.
You got more?
I'm almost getting like a face shape.
Temple, you touch where you think the face is.
Right there are his eyes.
Which way?
This is a portrait of the entity Peter felt, videotaped in shades of warm and cool.
Give Peter the camera for a second. Peter, you see if you can aim it right at him.
Someone hold
See it
this.
through the camera. Do you see his face?
Yes.
Are you aiming it right at him?
Right there. Yes, right there.
Dead center?
Yeah, right
Stop
there.
to the left.
Right, his eyes.
Where? Point to
Right straight ahead.
Okay.
Right straight ahead, right there.
Point on this. Right here. Those are his eyes.
See his eyes?
But the proof of the haunting here must still remain with the eyewitnesses.
I was a skeptic before. I didn't really believe in ghosts, but once it actually happened to me, I'm a believer.
With the passing of Easter, the Gadsden Hotel's ghostly season seems to be over. But as soon as the tinsel angels come out next Christmas, the entities are certain to return. And next year, perhaps, the entity that revealed himself to Peter James will let someone know where the gold is buried.
Next, doctors said she would never walk.
You have seen a lot of doctors in your life.
They couldn't do anything. This master, who's not a doctor, can't.
After the ouster of the Shah of Iran by the Ayatollah Khomeini, thousands of Iranians were forced into exile. Many came to the United States and left the old ways behind. But as Carla Wall reports, some of the old ways die hard. And that's why so many Iranians are gathering to see Pavarande, Iran's most famous and successful spiritual healer.
On the day that 17-year-old Layla Jamshed was born, artillery fire boomed in the streets of her native Tehran. A fire was raging in the bank underneath her apartment. Her birth was premature. She suffered oxygen deprivation, causing cerebral palsy. Since then, her parents have emigrated to the U.S. and have tried everything to help Layla.
What did the medical doctors give you in terms of a prognosis for Layla, in terms of what she could expect?
Last time we wasn't by the doctor, he said they cannot do anything more.
So that she would always have difficulty, have to walk with the crutches.
That's
she
right.
would never be able to use her left hand.
That's right.
But as hope dwindled, Layla's mother heard about Master Parvarande. Little known in America, Parvarande is viewed in Iran as a healer and a saint. He accepts no money for his spiritual services and has purportedly treated 2 million patients with a 95% success rate. Master Parvarande's first trip to the U.S. would prove a success for Layla as well.
Did you believe in a healer's ability?
No.
So
no,
why?
there's no such thing as a healer. There was no such thing as a healer.
In your mind?
Yeah.
But Layla's mother was adamant. The family made the trip from their home in Dallas to Los Angeles, where Layla had a private healing with Parvarande.
And he placed his hands on my back like this, and he applied such a great force.
What did it feel like?
It felt like some electrical impulses. And he did that for several moments. And he asked me to lay back down. After I got up off the mat, I noticed that my back was bendable. And you're talking to a person that's never bent her back before this.
Describe how you feel today compared to how you feel
So
beforehand.
relaxed. When he first let go of my bag, I felt hot. I felt as if something was being lifted off my back. And once he did that, the back pain was gone.
You have seen a lot of doctors in your life.
Yes. They couldn't do anything. And that this master, who's not a doctor, can.
Master Parvarande believes that many illnesses, both physical and psychological, are caused by disruptions in the electromagnetic energy that naturally flows through the body.
Everything in the universe has a vibration and oscillation. When your vibration is not at the correct level, being very simplistic, you have a dis-ease, a disease. I believe our best definition of a healer is an individual who can stimulate a vibratory effect in the receiver.
Healing has never been, in the last 300 years, a part of conventional medicine. It defies the laws of science. Most healers will tell you that they don't heal. They are channels for healing energy, which all of the ones I've talked to believe is the power of God.
And in fact, Master Parvarande does attribute his healing powers to a divine source.
God will transfer or will transmit energy to me. I think that my energy is going to be transferred to the people or to the patients.
I'm not a religious person, but I still do believe in a God. And he's got something going on with God. They've got their own direct telephone line, I think.
After a series of personal healing sessions with Layla, Parvarande continues to help her over the telephone.
I still don't have enough balance. When I'm trying to walk, I still stumble a little bit.
The results of these sessions have been profound, and Layla continues to improve.
I couldn't grip anything with my left hand. I couldn't move my legs as much as I'm able to move them now.
Through Parvarande's treatment, Layla is doing what mainstream doctors doubted she ever would. Layla is taking her first unaided steps.
I am very, very, very happy for this because I know that in the near future, Layla can take care of herself and be independent.
Although he is thrilled with the results, Layla's older brother remains a skeptic.
I have a hard time believing that it happens, but I believe my sister. It really doesn't matter what I believe, you know? What matters is what she believes and the fact that she's doing these things right now. That's what matters.
And it is this power of positive thought that even traditional doctors agree is a determining factor in recovery from all kinds of illnesses.
Before the master, you could only walk with crutches. You had no use of your left hand at all. And you had severe back pain. And you're telling me that today, not as much back pain.
Not as much.
Use of your left wrist. And you're walking without the crutches for 6 to 8 steps. What are your expectations now?
I expect him to cure me. I expect him to. Because if he can do this, if he can do what he's done for me so far, which he has, I expect to be cured.
Layla's condition continues to improve, and she hopes that on Parvande's next trip to the United States, he will be able to visit her at her home in Texas.
Next, do the secrets of the lost continent of Atlantis lie beneath this frozen landscape?
When we mapped it, the lay of the land that we got matches this ancient map.
More than 5,000 years ago, in Egypt, in the Maya Kingdom, and in North America, people inscribed their pyramids, temples, and totems with the same story of a vastly sophisticated civilization that had vanished beneath the waves. Before telephones, telegraph, or transatlantic trade, they all knew the same story. Was it simply a case of coincidental legend, or were these widely separated people all recalling historical fact?
There's a great myth memory that haunts mankind. It's a memory of a lost civilization and a lost continent. And yet, we do have a continent on our planet which is truly lost, which is the continent of Antarctica, buried beneath thousands of billions of tons of ice.
Graham Hancock is the author of Fingerprints of the Gods. In it, Hancock speculates that the lost civilization we know today as Atlantis may actually have been in Antarctica before it was covered with ice, and several ancient maps support Hancock's theory.
One of the best known of these maps is the Piri Reis map, drawn up by a well-known Turkish admiral in 1513 in Constantinople.
The Piri Reis map is thought to have been based on even older maps stored in Egypt in the legendary Library of Alexandria. The map shows the correct contours of the northern Antarctic coastline. Remarkable because in 1513, there was no sonar, radar, or deep drilling technology to see this outline.
The Antarctic Peninsula is buried under mile-thick ice.
Richard Noon is a millennial researcher who has reached conclusions similar to Hancock's, but with a deadly twist.
And when we mapped it using very advanced modern electronics, the lay of the land that we got matches the topography of this ancient map.
After studying the Perry-Ray East map, the United States Air Force concurred. The map showed Antarctica, ice-free.
The Earth apparently rolls along with long periods of quiet, and then an event which is described as a pole shift takes place.
The theory of pole shift suggests that when the ice at the poles is not in balance, the crust of the Earth can actually shift or slip around the core. The relationship between the continents would not change, but land in warmer parts of the planet would move into colder areas, and vice versa. This theory was first offered by former Keene College professor Charles Hapgood. It may sound far-fetched, but when it was proposed to Albert Einstein, he found it theoretically possible.
Were there to be a crustal displacement, the consequences would be truly cataclysmic. Mile-high tidal waves surging across all the continents of the Earth. Perhaps in this, we have the origins of the great story of the flood of Noah and of other flood myths around the world. And most important of all, it explains how we lose a whole continent and a whole civilization.
And Hancock warns, if it happened before, it could happen again.
Many people have rightly pointed to a dangerous conjunction of planets that will take place on 5/5/2000, the 5th of May, 2000. On that date, 5 planets will line up on the other side of the sun in a direct line with the Earth itself.
If on that day a slight nudge is exerted on the crust of the Earth by this particular alignment, then the crust of the Earth as a whole unit will slide over the more plastic viscous underlayer.
I think it's a good hypothesis, worthy of much further testing, that we look beneath the ice that now covers the Antarctic Peninsula. There, I suspect, we may find the cities, the great engineering works of an entire, advanced, and forgotten human civilization.
Why do we continue to be fascinated by Atlantis? Perhaps it's because our modern world resembles that once great civilization in so many ways. And as violent seismic activity appears to be on the increase worldwide, perhaps we're also fascinated by Atlantis because we fear that history will soon repeat itself.
If you've had a paranormal experience, please write to us at Sightings. Sightings can also be contacted at America Online at keyword Sightings. At the Sightings Forum, download images, sounds, and QuickTime clips. Also, join us daily in our chat room, live on AOL.
Until next time, remember, no mystery is closed to an open mind. For Sightings, I'm Tim White.
Next on Sci-Fi, Dark Shadows.
Houston, it's another happy day in space. I'm injecting now.
No one gets out of here alive.
Suck on this one.
Spiders, Sunday at 9 p.m. on Sci-Fi.
On this edition of Sightings, her name was Cathy, and her brutal murder nearly destroyed her family.
We were sentenced to living our lives without ever seeing her again.
Psychic Kathleen Ray retraces Cathy's last steps in search of a killer.
I feel like this is the end of the trail for him.
Everybody in this town is seeing UFOs.
Then Sightings investigates America's most active paranormal hotspot, the mysterious Valley of Colorado.
We saw lights come off from this side of the mountain over here, come clear across and go over the top of these mountains on this side.
his eyes? Right straight ahead, right there.
Later, holidays at Arizona's Gadsden Hotel with the ghosts of Christmas past.
I'm getting scared just talking about it, just thinking about it.
Healing defies the laws of science.
And a miraculous story about a master healer from Iran.
Welcome to Sightings. I'm Tim White. Cathy Torres was a great kid. She worked, went to college, was active in community service, and tutored high school students in English and Spanish. But when Cathy finally made the headlines, it wasn't for her promise or her talent. It was because she'd been murdered. 2 years after her death, her killer is still at large, and traditional police investigations just haven't worked. Can a psychic solve the case?
He stabbed Cathy to death. He robbed a town and a family of their precious future, and he got away with it.
We're completely in the dark. We really have no suspect in this case.
But no one in Placentia, California is giving up. No one will let a monster go free without a fight.
The hardest thing is wondering who could have done this to her and whether this person will ever be prosecuted. Cathy was active, very bubbly, always smiling. She was just a happy-go-lucky kid.
She was a straight-A student and a role model for her younger sister, Debbie.
She was like real popular in school, and you know, she was real pretty, and I wanted just to be exactly like her, you know. I was like, yeah, you know, that's my sister.
At age 20, she was putting herself through college with a part-time job at the local drugstore. On Saturday, February 5th, 1994, she worked a busy pre-Valentine's Day shift. Just after 8 p.m., she called her mother to say she was on her way home. But by 9, she hadn't arrived. Then it was 10, 11, 12, and no sign of Cathy.
Debbie and I went looking for her, and to places we thought maybe she might have stayed, which didn't seem right, but we went to check and didn't find her car anywhere.
The next day, Cathy didn't show up for work. On Monday, she missed school. Mary feared the worst.
I just had a feeling that she wasn't coming back.
As hours turned into days, the entire town was mobilized, but no one found any sign of Cathy or her car. Then it started to rain, and Mary had a disturbing vision.
Tuesday evening, I finally managed to talk about it. And I believe I told my husband that I knew that Cathy was in her car.
On February 12th, exactly 1 week after Cathy's disappearance, her mother's vision became a reality. Cathy's car was found, and Cathy was in it, in the trunk, stabbed to death.
The day Cathy was found, we were sentenced to living our lives without ever seeing her again.
Police scoured the car for clues, but the rain had washed away any potential evidence. A large reward was offered, but no one came forward with the break investigators were desperately searching for.
You hit the wall, and until something else happens, where there's a break in one of those areas, the case remains unsolved.
People ask me why I do this type of work. It's to give closure to those who are left behind that are suffering.
Kathleen Ray is a psychic detective with a proven track record. Her successful work on a similar case in Fresno was encouraging to the Placentia Police Department, and investigator Loomis agreed to meet with Ray and record her psychic impressions.
I would say this man's at least in his middle 40s. This is a man that's seen her several times, but I don't feel like he was lying in wait for her. I feel that he's very friendly around children. I'd almost think of a custodian of a school or something, or a janitor of a school. And I feel that there's a dip in the road And there's a green small building over here. I hear some type of motor. I feel like he turns off on a street that has an H in it, or a road that has an H in it.
Then, investigator Loomis accompanied Kathleen Ray as she attempted to reconstruct Cathy's last hours. She was trying to create a timeline and to find the actual site of the killing.
I feel that she feels fine about going to her car. And after she gets in the car and leaves, I feel she suddenly says, there's something I want to do. Because she stopped somewhere just to run in and do something. And if there's a video store, perhaps she stopped to get one but didn't get to the store.
That's a place that I know that she did stop. So I was surprised when Catherine mentioned that.
At 8:30, I feel like it's the beginning of problems with this man.
According to Ray's psychic impression, it was here, at this strip mall, that Cathy Torres first encountered her killer.
She gets out of her car for some reason. I feel that he then comes up behind her, and he has a knife here. And he says, get back in and slide across. And I feel like he went out into an area where there's a dip in the road, and over here is a small, dark green building that, if I listen, I can hear a generator type of sound in it.
Ray looked for those telltale landmarks and the letters C and H as clues to the crime scene. She guided investigator Loomis past Central Street. She had found her C. Just moments later, they rolled over a large dip in the road.
A green box. Here's the green box, and now there's the hum. You can hear the hum of that electricity there.
The large utility box was just as Ray had envisioned. It was a generator, providing power to some of Placentia's many oil wells. Sensing that the murder scene was very near, Ray was drawn to one particular rig. According to Kathleen Ray, it was here, in this oil field, that Cathy was murdered. Ray did not know that police already had evidence indicating she was right.
We do have a shoe that was analyzed by chemists at UNICAL. They determined that there was unknown pollen substance and also some sort of a petroleum-based oil in the dirt that was on the shoe.
Just beyond the oil field, Ray found her H. It led to a hospital, the same hospital where Cathy's body was discovered.
I feel like this is where the trauma came to an end. I feel like he's driving along after he has put her in the trunk of the car, parks the car, gets out, and takes off. And I feel that, that this is the end of the trail for him.
Her psychic vision of Cathy's fatal route was uncanny. The landmarks were exactly as she had foreseen, the letters as she expected. Kathleen Ray asked for a police sketch artist to help her create a portrait of Cathy's